Welcome to Candid Conversations. Today we're talking about a very serious and sometimes deadly issue, bullying. Our guests are going to help us recognize it and hopefully prevent it. But first, the usual gang is here. Becky Lantry and Gary Brienda. Hello, ladies.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
This is serious today.
It's a serious topic. You know, when I first heard we were going to go down this route, it really made me think of my childhood and just reflecting on coming from Sydney, Australia to the United States, how difficult it was to get acclimated culturally into the classroom, and I had such a heavy Australian accent, and just how the kids would make fun of me, and it was very difficult, and how it shapes you into the person you become, how it affects your self-esteem.
How would they make fun of you?
I mean, it was pretty bold. I mean, we would always, like, when you get picked for class, you know, when you get picked for activities, I'd always get picked, not always first because of my heavy accent, the way I looked, obviously I had very curly dark hair and this heavy, thick Aussie accent, which didn't make sense to a lot of the American students. So there was everything from nitpicking on the accent to nitpicking on how I put sentences together to how I threw a ball for dodgeball. You know, it was every little thing that was possible. And it was because they just didn't understand. You know, there was a misunderstanding and a sense of ignorance. So due to that, it does shape you into who you become. And you become more sensitive to being appreciated and accepted by people. And it really shapes your life.
It does.
Yeah, I agree. When I was younger and in school, I was very fat. And I was, oh boy, did they let me have it. When I'd go through the hallway, they would sing to me, "Watch it wiggle, see it jiggle, cool and fruity, it's Dina's big booty." I mean, they were
so mean.
They were relentless.
Yeah.
But I took that as, one, lose weight, but also really thickened my skin.
Yeah, that's the thing that it does. It thickens you, and I really think it shapes you for the life you're going to have. And I think it allows you to take criticism, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to always feel like you're being ostracized in the room or you stand out separately. But nowadays, it's so much more intense.
Oh, yes.
You know, with the social media aspect of it, you know, the effect of it in the home, and then, you know, children or young adults acting out at school because of what they're seeing at home.
Right.
You know, so I'm really looking forward to speaking to our guest today and learning more about
young adults, but actually even younger than that, they act that out.
Wow.
Yeah.
You seeing it with your granddaughter too, Becky?
Yes. I asked her if she knew what a bully was, and she says, "Yeah, they're really mean. They're really mean to you in class." I said, "Do you have somebody in your class like that?" And she told me yes. She said at the beginning of the year she had a bully in her actual classroom. I said, "So did you tell her that you didn't like her doing that?"
Right.
And she said yes. And then I told my teacher. Like,
So the teacher took care of it?
yeah,
or did
teacher took care of it.
Which is, you know, not always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes parents have to step in and take charge. Sometimes a mentor has to step in and take charge. It's just unbelievable. You think you would send your kids off to a safe environment, and then they come back with all these wounds.
Well,
it's unfortunate, right?
We actually, in this district, in the Santa Monica Unified District, we actually have a no bullying policy, and the children actually in the grade schools, you will see that they have a Friday exercise, and they wear their no bullying t-shirts.
Wow.
That's
Oh,
terrific.
yes.
And hopefully that's what's going to notify everyone what bullying is. But
Exactly.
today we're very lucky because our guests are going to tell us exactly what that is. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Riding a bicycle can seem like child's play.
But only if you're playing indoors.
Riding in the real street has real consequences.
Play it safe. Ride by the rules. Cars and bikes need to play together.
We are now being joined by our first guest, Candy Lewis, the Executive Director of the Positive Results Corporation. Candy, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my honor.
Oh, we are all so very thrilled here. Will you please tell us a little bit more about your company?
Absolutely. The Positive Results Corporation is a nonprofit, and we've been in business since 1992. It was formed by my brother, who is a Los Angeles police officer, and we wanted to make sure that youth in the community, whether they were in gangs or not, had an opportunity to have their voices heard and to have someone to help them and mentor them. And I took over the company in 2008 and did a couple of years just volunteer work in the community to understand what is a nonprofit and what would my personal value be. And we decided to focus our efforts on teen dating violence and bullying because we found that this affected almost every person that we talked to.
Wow.
Really? Every person?
Almost everyone. Everyone has had a story about how they were abused, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sexual, or financial, or their mother, their sister, their cousin. And then the more we looked into it, we realized that things such as drug abuse and gangs and bullies all stem from teen dating violence, which all stem from violence in the home. And so our platform is to eliminate all forms of violence and abuse, especially in youth. And if we can educate them and give them the information and the tools at an early age, and we can teach them effective communication and self-worth and let them know that no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what kind of mess or tore up environment you live in, that's not who you are. That's your environment, but that's not you.
What's so great about it, Candy, that I can say is that especially if a child is in a home of a single parent, and I was a single parent home, and having a resource like your organization, if I thought about it back then, I mean, just the benefits of it. Can you just describe a little bit, like key aspects of what you guys truly offer to a child?
We do a leadership academy. It's 12 weeks. We teach effective communication, conflict resolution, decision making, tolerance and diversity, respect, and team building. And that really builds your own self-esteem to help you to understand who you are. We also do healthy relationship workshops. So many people fall into unhealthy relationships because they don't know what a healthy relationship looks like. So we explain the difference, what is unhealthy and what is healthy. And we also do violence prevention. We'll go anywhere, parks, churches, schools, community groups, and we partner with about 87 other community-based and nonprofit organizations.
So what are the age groups that you actually attend to?
Our bully workshops, we usually start with elementary school on bullying. And for dating violence, we will start with middle school, about 12 years old and up.
Okay.
And then we go to about 24. But we also train the parents and adults, but we keep the classes separate.
Right.
It's important that the kids be able to communicate whatever concerns they have, because unfortunately sometimes the parent is the bully or the abuser.
Yeah, speaking of the parent being that, I mean, it's probably a pretty crucial thing to not have a role model in the house, or somebody that can kind of guide you in that right direction. Can you speak a little bit about how a child would play that off in a school setting versus what they're getting at home?
Okay, so you might have a child who the parents may be on drugs, or maybe the parents are just not emotionally or mentally prepared to raise children. And so your children are sometimes, they're bullied at home, or they're hungry because the parents aren't there. They're suffering untold abuse at home. And so if there's no one there that can help them, they will normally go and take this anxiety out on a child at school, or maybe even on the way. So we're finding that the name calling, the picking on other kids, the bullying, and children are usually much more aggressive. So they will be hands-on and physical, whereas an older person is more taunting and verbal abuse.
Gosh, you wouldn't think that starvation, malnutrition would play such a big role in this, like not having food on the table, not having the right vitamins, supplements, how that could affect the mindset.
Absolutely. I mean, how many of us have been hungry and we've lost our personality?
I'm ready to fight.
Right?
You ready to fight, Becky?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm hungry and I'm going to be mad.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so we've, there was this young boy who, he woke up, his mother wasn't there. And that's because the mother was on drugs. And so she's not there, she's not able to prepare the meal. Then that means that he goes to school, and if he doesn't get there in time for a free breakfast, if that school has free breakfast, he's missed that.
Right.
And so it's now 11 o'clock, and that child has not ate since the prior evening at maybe 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And so their body doesn't have the energy and the stamina to continue. And so that brain, the little brain starts screaming and hollering, and they don't know how to communicate this.
Yeah.
So children have very limited verbal abilities. that's not the word, but they're limited in the way they can express
Right.
themselves.
Exactly.
And so it usually comes out in a physical manner or in a taunting manner, especially if they've been bullied or abused. And so unfortunately, some of our children live in the worst kind of environments. They've been sexually abused, emotionally abused, they've been starved. And so if they're getting this at home, there's no place that they can go to other than school, because they can't bully the person who's bullying them.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But if I was a child at school and I had a friend that was being bullied, what could I do?
Well, the first thing that you can do is you can be a friend. Do not laugh. We have a lot of kids that just like to laugh and they'll join in because they don't know what else to do. First, stand up and say that you're not going to let somebody else bully your friend. Also, tell someone. If that child who's being bullied doesn't feel comfortable to tell someone, tell your parent. Tell a teacher or someone on the school that you respect, someone that you feel comfortable with. You can also get that kid and actually take their hand and say, come on, why don't you go with me? And take them out of that environment. Because usually in elementary school, it's more taunting. Sometimes it is physical, but if one person acts a positive manner, then usually other people will follow through. But it is most important that you tell someone, because if you don't tell, it's not like, okay, if I don't tell someone, this is going to go away. It never goes away.
Right.
It actually just gets worse.
You have to address it.
You have
Absolutely,
to address it,
you
right?
must
To
address it.
But in your training and your teaching, is there a course that you actually teach the teachers, the principals, the vice principals, so that they can actually know when the bully is there?
Yes, we do. We actually have a full series of training, and we do twice a year workshops. They're called Stop the Pain, and these are very interesting because we bring the entire community in. It's Stop the Pain, a teen summit on dating violence, sex trafficking, and bully prevention. And we started with teens, but we've noticed over the last couple of years, and they've been going on since 2011, that parents are bringing their elementary school students. So we have workshops for the little kids, for the middle school. We have workshops for parents, and we have a base program for educators. So they will actually get community continuing hour credits.
Okay.
So they'll understand not only how to talk to a child, but what are some of the circumstances behind the bullying? Because see, people don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to be a bully.
Right.
I'm going to push this one. I'm going to hit that one.
Right.
There's always something else going on.
Exactly.
One of the things that we have to remember, there's a lot of people that have done a lot of drugs. And when you do a lot of drugs, you may not realize, but that drug stays in your system. And especially if you're pregnant, it changes that mind of the child. So their DNA completely changes. You see a lot of kids that have a lot of issues. Not every child that has ADD or ADHD really has it. They're just like kids that are very active.
Right.
But there are some kids that have mental, emotional, and physical disabilities that are not able to really critically think because their parents were doing drugs while they were in their womb.
Right.
And it changes the mindset of the child.
Wow.
So we help the educator to understand, what is this child going through? Besides, are they just being mean? Because now there are some kids that are just mean, but there are some kids that are hungry. There's some that they're being abused. There's some that just need some help. And then I cannot forget the ones that don't know how to read. So back in the day when we were coming up, those kids were the class clowns. But they might be the clown or they might be the bully. And in order for someone to understand that, okay, I can't read, I don't want anyone to know this. I don't want anyone to know that I'm homeless. I don't want anyone to know that I've been abused. I'm going to put this mask on and I'm going to terrorize everyone. So the only way that you know that I'm here is when you're trying to get out of my way.
Oh gosh, that's
So acting out to hide the hunger,
Right.
to hide the shame.
Yes.
So we as parents, as sisters, brothers, family members, as friends, we have to be aware of what's going on in somebody's life to try and help find that problem so we can protect our children.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
And are we actually defeating the bullying? Is it working?
In some instances, yes, because we now have awareness programs. We have commercials, and as I heard you say earlier, a lot of school districts have a bullying policy.
Yes, and that's what we need to encourage. And
Yes.
Candy, thank you so much for being with us today. Your information was invaluable to us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Really
It was a
appreciate it, Candy.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with our next guest.
Discover 30 years of opera in Santa Monica. Discover the Verdi Chorus.
We are now being joined by Tanisha Webb, the founder of the Like Me Advocacy Group. Tanisha, we're so glad you're spending time on the couch with us.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's family.
Oh, it is.
Yes,
It
it is.
definitely
We
is.
are.
Welcome.
It
We'd
is.
love to have you here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. Can we start off by, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your organization?
Well, Like Me is a nonprofit in development. It was developed in the sense of if you are a person that is suffering from depression, if you're suffering from low self-esteem, if you've been abused, if you have experienced abandonment, if all of those things like myself that you've suffered, and like me, you can get restoration, you can get peace, you can find healing. And so we are here to help transform victims into survivors.
All right.
And help you to understand, like me, the choice is yours to do all of those things.
It's amazing.
Wow.
It's amazing, powerful work. And when we think about these cycles of abuse or cycles of abandonment or violence, as we were speaking to our guest earlier, it starts early on, doesn't it, Tanisha? I mean, it starts almost as if before you're even born, before you come into this world. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, up until recently, like right now, I'm in the midst of working on my master's in psychology. And I had this whole premise that no child is born evil and mean and hateful. And then I started really doing my research and understanding that violence starts in the womb when you have a mother that's being abused on any level. And so with that in mind, children get all of that in the womb, and they're born into this world carrying the same depression and hate that a lot of us that we internalize as mothers. And so cognitively, it's like, if a child is in the other room or even away from home, we tend to think that because they're not there in the physical, that they're not experiencing the same negative feelings that we're experiencing, because children are very intuitive. They may not understand the processes of what's going on, but they do understand, and they're very keen about when something is wrong. And so again, certain children that are born to mothers that are abused, they come into this world with those same feelings and social impairments.
Both verbal and physical abuse?
Yes, because when you think of bullying, the average person thinks of someone being physical with them, walking up and hitting them, spitting on them and hurting them, wounds from the physical standpoint. But then from the psychological standpoint, you're talking about intimidation, you're talking about hopelessness, you're talking about helplessness, you're talking about self-sabotage. You're talking about, because it's not just you being violent and aggressive towards others, but then it's the perception of yourself. When you feel hopeless and when you feel defenseless, there has to be some arena that you feel empowered. And sometimes children or others use violence and aggression in order to fulfill that empowerment because they want to fill that void.
Well, what can a parent do or a sibling do in the home to help a child not feel that way?
Well, positive affirmations, first of all, early intervention is really key, because if you have a child that has experienced constant trauma and violence, if they're able to get the psychological help, if they're able to get the family support, if they're able to get the positive reinforcements, then they have a greater chance of, leading a productive and a normal life. But when you allow this to go on and they finally get into that state where they feel as though no matter what happens at this point, my life is doomed, now you have a child that's moving into a space where now they're possibly wanting to commit suicide or wanting to get more aggressive with others in the household. And I'll take, for instance, I really actually thought prior to this show that I hadn't experienced bullying until I really dug deep and really took a look at the fact that my mother was a victim of domestic violence, and we lost her to domestic violence in '91. And my stepfather, he was the bully in the house. Because again, we tend to think that bullies are in school.
Right.
But when we talk about the aspect of a bully being at home, he was the intimidator. Even though he was the authority figure, he misused that authority. And so,
How do you protect yourself from your father?
Right.
you
Well, yeah,
know,
what do you do?
Right,
What do you
at
really
that
do?
you,
point.
I really, it's hard to even answer that question because I don't even know how I got through.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, you go, when I went to school, I had certain teachers that I was very close to, because I took all of my pain and everything that I was suffering, my depression. I even experienced PTSD and didn't even realize it. But I took all of that energy and I channeled it into my education. And so it allowed me to develop positive interpersonal relationships with my teachers. And so there were very few that I did share information with. And they tried to step in and help and talk to my mother about it. But ultimately, the violence and the whole spectrum of the situation was much greater than their scope of intervention.
Is that what you would recommend then to somebody who feels that they're being affected by bullying in the home, is to go to a teacher?
Someone that you trust outside of the home, because to keep in mind, a lot of times we become scared in saying anything because the likelihood of that information getting back to the predator. So you want to seek outside of the family, someone that you trust, someone that you can believe that will take action on your behalf to be that advocate, to seek intervention, even if it's outside, like for law enforcement or counseling or whatever the case may be. Because again, being in the home and dealing with violence when it's coming from a parent, being bullied from a parent, it almost feels like, where do you go without suffering consequences or the backlash or the retaliation from that person once they understand that you've told?
So, Tanisha, should we actually go backwards? Go back to where the bullying actually started when you were in the womb. That's the person you have to deliver first. That will actually cure that person that's there.
Absolutely. So we're talking about the mother.
That's right.
Right.
And
The
we're
mother
talking
figure.
about her healing, and we're talking about her survival, and we're talking about her getting the help that she needs and to be able to build on that self-esteem. Because like I said, even in the abuse stages, if there's early intervention, so if I'm, and keeping in mind that I'm a young mother, and I also was a victim and now a survivor of domestic violence. And so my children indirectly experienced it like I did. But there was a spirit in me that allowed me to want to seek outside of myself. And so I did a lot of research. I did interact. I was able to have positive interpersonal relationships with others, because when you are victimized like that, the likelihood of you having positive social interactions with others is very slim, because you distrust.
So how did you work that out with your children? Because if you
Communication.
actually searched and actually interacted with everybody else, so that the actual anger and bullying weren't being let out through you, when your children got here, what did you do with them?
First of all, I think I I think I really just sheltered them too much. But what I did take note of was communication.
And I
To
think that's
talk
exactly
to
the
them.
key.
I spoke to them on their level from when they were very young. If I had to get down on the floor and meet them eye to eye to explain to them on the level of a 5-year-old what was going on, I kept the communication going. I let them know that they could feel safe to come and speak to me about anything. Even let them know that I was not, because I was the parent, that I was not above being human enough for you to come and say, Mom, I didn't like that happen. The one thing that I always encouraged was respect.
Okay.
And that's, I think, what we're going to take away from it, communication and respect. Tanisha, thank you so much for joining us today. This was
And thank you for
invaluable
having me.
information.
Thank you,
Yes,
Tanisha.
thank you
Thank
so
you
much
so
for
much.
coming.
So much. And thank you so much for joining us. We certainly hope that you took away something that you can obviously do something to help somebody who's being bullied. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.